What's going on, Junkie Nation? Happy Labor Day to those of you in the USA. The rest of the world, I'm not sure if you guys celebrate Labor Day or not, or maybe something equivalent. I was just in Peru for 6 months. Their Labor Day is like May 1st, so I think everyone has a Labor Day. But anyway, I'm going to hang here for a sec, and then I'll slowly come in and let you guys know what's up. I got Goes here from MMA Junkie Radio and Spinning Backclick to my side in case I fall apart. No, but really, this is my first time doing a Q&A. I've seen Mike Bond do it before, and I think Nolan King did one before. So I'm watching like on YouTube, on Facebook, just like a normal MMA fan. But from this end, I think it's a little bit different. So I just got to make sure that everything's going. Okay, I do see a comment here from Chris Goes Wild, Trav 504. Those are some of the usual names that I see on Spinning Backclick. And we don't have a Spinning Backclick today because, again, it's Labor Day. So a lot of the staff have the day off. We're based in the United States. We do have some international talent, but most of us are based in the United States. So we observed the major holiday, but we didn't want to leave you guys hanging because let's face it, we got some big shows coming up. Last weekend was a rare off week, right? There was no UFC, no PFL, no Bellator. I even checked. There wasn't even a one championship. They had their Muay Thai series in Thailand, but yeah, as far as MMA, it was bone dry. But this week we got UFC. They're back at the Apex with Sean Brady and Gilbert Burns, and then Bellator has an event. I think they're starting to wind down. They're down in San Diego. It is part of their Champion Series. Usman Nurmagomedov, he's the best one yet. Isn't that something you always hear when it comes to the Nurmies, the Nurmagomedovs? He's the best one yet. Come on, man. Let your career shake out and see if you even get close to Khabib Nurmagomedov before we start anointing fighters from the team, right? And I know it's their job to prop each other up, but I've just heard it a lot. Usman is Umar's brother, and they're cousins to Khabib. But yeah, he defends his title against Alexander Shabaley out in San Diego. So we got a UFC, a Bellator, and then we have a Dana White Contender Series tomorrow. You guys might have just finished watching the stream on MMA Junkie. We do the weigh-ins every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Now, that's the usual start time for Spinning Backclick, but we pushed it back an hour because of this 10-week stretch where Dana White Contender Series. We want you to see the weigh-ins. We can start an hour later, no big deal. And then we'll go back to our normal start time of 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. And again, because it's an off day, I'm here to take some of your questions. So any questions you guys might have, fire away. They can be with the current news, right? Everything that's out there now. Maybe some gossip and rumors. And I'll try my best to confirm what I know and obviously stay ethical with what I may have heard, what I can share, and or just be upfront. I'm transparent. If I don't know, I don't know. That's why I'm just the guy that passes the ball on Mondays. I just distribute. All right. Those guys, they get the alley-oops and they slam dunk it. Mike Bond, Goes, Danny Segura, Farah Hanu, Nolan King, Matt Wells, right? I just distribute. So if you look at my score sheet, it says like 19, 20 assists. I kill it on that regard. I might occasionally, get that open court layup or whatever, but I'm just a distributor. But I'm transparent. Those guys are the experts. You should tune in every Monday for Spinning Backclick and check it out. But I can answer questions. I've been in the game for a long time. If you want to ask me questions from back in the day, how'd you get started? Whatever, right? Current news. What's going on this weekend? I know the rankings pretty well. I've been handling the rankings for USA Today Sports and MMA Junkie for over a decade now. So I want to personally get into that one a little bit because that whole thing going on with Dana White, the media, right? Pound for pound, you know where I'm headed, right? We'll talk about that. But we can go in any direction, any question you have. Again, I'm transparent. I'll try my best to answer. And I'm pretty quick with these fingers. So even if it's a good one, right? And I'm dying to know the answer, I'll hit up one of the guys or Fada or somebody, and maybe they can give me a quick answer because those guys are in the know, right? All right, so I'm going to start taking a peek here, seeing what you guys got. Give some shout outs. Danny Segura, he's in the chat. Is 308 better than 300? Is UFC 308 better than 300? Let's take a look. That's a good question. That comes in from, what's the first question? Colostrum, I think, is how you spell it. 300, of course, was the card headlined by Alex Fajeda and Jamal Hill, right? Historic UFC 300 card here in Las Vegas. Remember, one of the best celebrations ever. It's too bad my man Jamal Hill was on the other end of it, but that was funny. It was original and it was funny. And I mean, when you can KO somebody, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? Remember Tito and the Gravedigger, and oh my gosh, there's been some good ones over the years. But Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway headlines UFC 308 out in Abu Dhabi, and that takes place in late October. There's 2 pay-per-views in October, and this is the second one. It's on October 26th. Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Oh boy, here we go. Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Jeff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. Marcos Rogério de Lima versus Kennedy Nchukwu. Abu Sipian Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. Renat Radanov versus Nursultan Rubizoev. There's also some rumors of, let's see, Mateus Rebecki's on the card, Armin Petrosian's on the card. We'll see. I guess those haven't been announced. Maybe Victor Hugo versus Farid Bashar. All right, but I think what you guys want to do is compare main card to main card, right? And now remember, I'm going to go off what 300 was on paper, not what the result was. I think that's the fairest way to do it. We didn't know Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway were going to have that classic ending, right? I mean, we were like, what? A featherweight against the lightweight? It didn't go too well for Max last time he went out, all that stuff. It went well from this time. He's the current BMF. That card was Fajeda versus Hill, Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, Armin Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira, Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. Okay, so on paper, and I guess we can throw in Yuri Prochazka. Oh, no, come on, man. 300 is better on paper. That's right. It was deep. Prochazka versus Rakic, Sterling versus Cater, Harrison versus Holm, Lopez versus Youssef. Holy cow. Moicano versus Jalen Turner, Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez, Bobby Green and Jim Miller, Davidson Figueredo and Cody Garbrandt. So on paper, this one was better. But let's just go main card versus main card. They both have title fights. Fajeda versus Hill was on paper pretty sexy. Got to give it up. Now, so is this one. Max, man, he's back. Max Holloway's a former champion who got shut out because of Alex Volkanovski's dominance, and now he's got a chance against Ilia Topuria, who's undefeated. We can't. There's nothing we can do as far as criticizing that guy's career. It's been perfect. But so it's almost it's almost like a draw at that point. Now we go to, oops, I put up the wrong card. I put up 306. There it is. Whittaker versus Chimaev. Remember when I exhaled and said, oh, here we go? Just because is Chimaev going to show up, right? If he does, yeah, I'm anticipating that fight, man, more than Weili and Jonan. And I usually don't say that when it's a title fight. That should be the apex of our MMA interest, right? The best is fighting in a certain division, and someone's there to challenge her or him, and it's usually someone that's paid their dues and it's well deserved. Here we go. But I think I'm more into Whittaker and Chimaev than that one. So I'll say the main events were a draw. I like more Chimaev Whittaker. Let's continue. 308 has Cyril Gane versus Volkov. 300 had Max Holloway versus Gaethje. I was more into Max Holloway versus Gaethje. Magomed Ankalaev, I feel for that guy. He deserves to be the next title challenger to Alex Fajeda. But it's Khalil Rountree. That's fine. We move on. Once it's announced, we move on. Alexander Rakic against Magomed Ankalaev. And the fourth fight down was Armin Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira. Pretty even. But those lightweights, man, they just know how to dance, right? Oh, man. I think name value, 300. And then Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige, I'm assuming kicks things off. And that goes again. Yeah. So I would give that one. I prefer that one than Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. I was not into that at all. And they blew it because that fight sucked. Even Cody Brundage booed himself, I think, if you recall. So I still think on paper, 300 better than 308. And main card versus main card. Just because there were some gangsters on 300, and I'm just trying to teleport myself back to what I felt going in, and just Max Holloway delivers, Justin Gaethje delivers, Charles Oliveira delivers his fights. I can't say Bo Nickel and Brundage sucked, right? Because I'm teleporting back to before when the fight started. And Bo Nickel, I was anticipating, is he going to dominate, or could there be an upset here? 300 was pretty special, narrowly. But 308's nice. When they announced 308, I said, that's a proper pay-per-view card. Here's my 80, here's my 70, whatever it costs. Yeah, I'm in. No arguing. It's nice. It's really nice. Not all pay-per-views are built the same, that's for sure. Great question. Great way to kick things off. Brian John, let's go. Goes his world. He's in there as well. Me, Diamond 44. Is the UFC off their rocker? See if I can show these. Yeah, there you go. Is the UFC off their rocker, charging crazy prices they are for UFC 306 at the Sphere? The card isn't that good, is it? Great question. I've seen some influencers trying to tackle this online. Some saying that it's a failure. I heard there was 1,000 tickets left. They did charge a lot, but oh man, Vegas can close strong. I'm from Southern California, and we used to be called like an area, right? Because it's a bunch of cities. Orange County, which is a county. Anaheim, that's the one that hosts major sporting events. Los Angeles, San Diego, we call it's a big walk-up crowd because Southern California has so many options that a lot of people are like, hey, what are you doing? Put down that beer. You're at the bar. Put down that beer. Someone just texted me. I got 2 tickets to the game. Let's go. So we're not planners in SoCal. Vegas has a little bit of that to it. And I've seen a lot of cards that don't sell well in Vegas, and then all of a sudden, boom, on fight night, it's an impossible ticket to get. That's most of the time the sellout. Most of the time the UFC hits it out of the park. Will they make up their 20 mil that they're in? I don't know. They only went 10 fights. That's for a reason. They usually go 12, 14, sometimes 15, right? To get some of these fighters fighting. Why aren't they doing that? It must add to the expenses somehow. Is all I can think of. The only way I think this fight card can fail is A, if the fights suck, right? I don't see that as the type of card where the fights will suck. I mean, O'Malley versus Merab has been built up. It's a quality #1 contender challenging the champ who's on fire, who's becoming one of the biggest names in the sport. Grasso versus Shevchenko, that's got a lot of history to it, right? They're 1-0-1 if you're Grasso's side. So she's beaten her and she's drawn her. Now, a lot of us felt Valentina won, and it's almost like this is the trilogy breaker, but it really isn't, because if Valentina wins, they're 1-1-1. Valentina will be okay with it because she'll be the one that holds the belt. But the series will be even, 1-1-1. It should have been 1-1. This should be the trilogy, but it's not. Now, if Grasso wins, that's it. Valentina's got options, though. Remember, she was pretty badass as a bantamweight. Amanda Nunes is no longer there. Raquel Pennington hasn't really established herself, and she's not really that highly respected in terms of, ooh, she's going to have a nice long run here. No, a lot of people are treating her as an underdog, probably going into every fight, especially with Kayla Harrison now on board. So, Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. That should be good. Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovics. I really like Zellhuber. I really like him. I think he's a future star. Ronaldo Rodriguez versus O'Day Osborne. O'Day, man, good friend of the show. He's actually done some watch-alongs with us, but he's been struggling as of late. This is a big fight for him. His back's to the wall. Someone said something similar the other day. It was Yana Kunitskaya. Yana Santos felt like she was fighting for her job. O'Day might be in that same position. So, yeah, look, I hear you, man. It's a lot to cough up, especially as an MMA fan if you get UFC Fight Pass, if you get ESPN Plus, and now you got to pony up every month, sometimes twice a month for pay-per-views. That hurts. It hurts. And I don't know if it's UFC or ESPN that's been tossing us a bone and saying, if you order it now, you get $10 off. Call a buddy, split it. Now it's down to 35. I think we can all live at 35, right? 70 though, I don't blame any of you that say I'm skipping this one. I really don't. You can always tune into our watch-alongs. Goz and I do a watch-along for every pay-per-view, and we'll be doing one for UFC 306. You watch the fights along with us. If you order it, we watch it together. If you don't, we'll tell you what's happening in real time. Now, that applies for the pay-per-view. Obviously, the prelims, we all see them for free, right? Either on ESPN, ABC, or ESPN Plus, or ESPN2, or wherever they're on. But the main card, we're always there for you. If you don't want to hit refresh on Twitter, refresh, or you're texting your buddies, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Just tune in. We'll tell you what's happening in real time. I don't fault anyone for not getting it. Me Diamond 44, Matthew Chalk. Would they have signed Finney from Contender? Would you have signed Finney from Contender Series? It was his second win on DWCS. Is that Torrez guy? Now we're running into, is he exciting is the problem. Man can fight, but is he what they want? No. Somehow he's on another card though. I think they appreciate how much he wants to be in the UFC. I've seen fighters go from not exciting to pretty exciting, especially a few Brazilians that kind of were more like floppers from the jiu-jitsu game. You go to the ground, what's up? I'll jack you up. But when we were standing, not much. Oh, let's flop. Let's come to my world. And then I saw some become really good. I wouldn't say Charles Oliveira was a flopper, but dude, he's got some great Muay Thai, some great offensive wrestling. He became a really, really exciting fighter. But a lot of times he was long and lanky. If he got hit, he wasn't taking punches well for a while. He was kind of exciting though because of the submissions. Maybe he was a poor example. Damian Maia, same thing. His striking was nice for about a round, and then all of a sudden the steam came off. But he picked up that wrestling, and then he took it to the ground. He'd get finishes. So Finney, I love his slams. I think he's got a shot. I tend to be more positive than negative, and he seems resilient, so I'm rooting for him. We'll see. Would I have signed him though? That's the question. I agree with Dana. I don't think I would have, but I wouldn't have clowned him like that. It was clear his mom was in the audience, right? And I don't want to hear about Dana's ruthless, this, that, whatever. I just would have said, man, not today. Now, all that other stuff about, hey, I asked you to go out and fight and you didn't, and you looked worse, or just you're not in, you know? And Mick or Sean should have said, that's his mom, or Hunter. You know that's his mom, right? Take it easy on him. And he made it sound like he was a jabroni, but yet he's back. So I wouldn't have signed him. Goes' World says, in your opinion, will Topuria reign as champ for a while? I believe it or not, I still need to see more of Topuria. He's been smashing, so I don't know what he's like when he's not smashing. He just seems to be very well-rounded, very confident. The game is in slow motion to him. I told that to someone the other day, Myron Santos. He's out there just so comfortable. It's all happening so slow. He sees something. He knows how to slip it. You know, he'll throw his combos. He's not wasting energy. Everything's in slow motion, whereas the opponent's like, you know, and they're just throwing hooks and closing their eyes, and he stays in the pocket. His eyes are open, like he's 1 or 2, 3 steps ahead of you, like a chess master. So let me get this question. It's Goes' World. That one's on. That's what I like about him. But did he catch Volkanovski on the tail end of his run, coming off that vicious KO to Islam Makhachev? Chin wasn't ready for it, or does that guy just have that power? I think this question this fight will tell us the answers. But I hope he's dragged into deep waters, because that's really what I need to know is what do you like in rounds 4 or 5? Remember John Jones against Dominic Reyes? He was arguably down all 3 rounds. Turns out he wasn't, but we thought he might be. And then in rounds 4 and 5, he wins them. He was tough in the championship rounds, and he won. He's, let's see what Topuria is going to be like if he gets pushed like that. But so far, he's been pretty close to impeccable. Let's see here. Lazy Bed. Gorgeous George, back in your radio days, who was the most interesting fighter you ever interviewed? Well, we're still in our radio days. We just uploaded like episode 3,494. So we're like 5 or 6 episodes away. It might be 95. I can't remember. From 3,500. It's in podcast form. We're no longer on Sirius Radio. We've gone through podcasts, Ustream, YouTube, Sirius XM, television. Now back to podcasts. So we're still there. You can catch the podcast, same place you catch the Spinning Backlick podcasts, because Spinning Backlick is a live show on Facebook and YouTube, like it is now, like what I'm doing here. But it's also in podcast form. Omni, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. But the question was, who's the most interesting fighter, bro? We've interviewed like 10,000 fighters. No, we've had 10,000 guests, and some of them are repeat. So let's say 5,000 guests, notables, fighters. You're asking me to pick the most interesting one, right? Who was I captivated by? I'm going to give you old answers. I'm going to give you a couple because I can't narrow it down. Okay. Vanderlei Silva was one of my favorite fighters in the world. And the fact that he came to our studio, gave away the shirt that he had on to one of our listeners, answered every question imaginable for like 2-3 hours. It meant so much. He was tough to get, but when we finally got him, he delivered. But again, this is a guy that I was watching as a fan at 2-3 a.m. in the morning because the fights were in Japan, right? And he had the song, and he had, the pre-fight ritual, and then he had some nasty KOs. And the fact that he had the balls to fight heavyweights, he fought as a middleweight at one point, mostly as a light heavyweight, undersized. You saw him against Liddell, size difference, but just a badass. He could speak English. He was funny. He had the highlights to back it up. He had great stories. So he's one that stood out. I remember one time we had Tony Ferguson on, and the nice thing about Tony Ferguson is he would just get you so fired up you wished his fight. Now this was early Tony Ferguson. He'd get you so fired up that you wish his fight was like that weekend, because he was ready to go. He just had that good, how he is, kind of a motivator, cliches and things like that. Except back then, he was just winning, right? And so he was fun in that sense. We geeked out over BJ Penn and George St. Pierre when they came to the studio, because when they came to the studio, we always kept them there for a long time. They'd take questions from fans. So we felt like we made the fans' day. It made our day. And a lot of them overlapped with us when we were fans or fanboys, whatever you want to call us, before we started covering the sport. So you got to tick two boxes, right? As media, we delivered a guest for MMA Junkie. And as a fan, we got to talk to guys. And, I would normally say guys and gals, but gals weren't fighting back then. Guys that we had seen during our time, Don Fry. So it's mostly the old school fighters. But I'll give you a new school fighter. Khabib was interesting in studio. Conor was interesting in studio. Conor was interesting to us because we met him before he was even with UFC. We met him through Cage Warriors. We just had a feeling he would be big, just not as big as he became. I didn't know he was going to win 2 belts. I thought he could maybe win 1. I wasn't even sure he could win 1. He was chasing the great Jose Aldo at the time. So, yeah, it's from that era. Recently, we talked to Myron Santos, and it's not because it's fresh in my memory, but he was just really fun to talk to. When you're in a job for a certain amount of time, you got to refresh the deck. You got to reshuffle the deck, refresh things, because otherwise, I'm gonna grow old and stale, and the sport's gonna become old and stale to me. So I'm trying to I'm now connecting with fighters. I'm double their age, right? But I'm trying to bridge the gap between that. So I was really excited to talk to Myron Santos. There's a little bit of him that reminds me of Anderson Silva. Soft spoken, great striker, fights in slow motion to him, good smile. I don't know. I really liked him. So, and he's now in Vegas, so maybe we'll have him on a few more times. But he was pretty funny and down to earth. Outside of that, we really liked having Roddy Piper in our studio. He was there for almost 3 hours, I think. And Chuck Zito. Chuck Zito used to be the president of the New York City chapter of Hell's Angels. Chuck Zito was kind of one of the first celebrities to ever go to the UFC. Kind of like how Rogan was one of the first celebrities to endorse the UFC via backstage reporter and then future color comment or became a color commentator. Chuck Zito would bring like Pamela Anderson, Charlie Sheen, but he was kind of like the bodyguard of the stars. Then he went away for a little bit, not prison, but just he wasn't as present, right? The UFC used to give him 10 front row tickets because the UFC didn't have fans back then. There was the guy from Green Mile, I forget his name, the big black dude. There was, I think Cindy Crawford, maybe, Chuck Zito. So yeah, it's not like it is now. And so slowly Chuck's tickets started diminishing. But anyway, he's got interesting stories from Hell's Angels time, from his time in Hollywood. He was on Oz on HBO. He was on Sons of Anarchy. But he had great street fight stories. And on our show, one thing we really love to talk about with in studio guests was after they told us all about them, we talked MMA. If they were promoting something, we would talk about it or whatever. We'd always get a street fight story. And this guy always delivered. He had great street fight stories. He was a tough guy, right? From New York City, the Hells Angels era that he had. Usually no one leaves the Hells Angels once you're in, but he was allowed to leave in good graces. Now you'll see Chuck almost every pay-per-view. He's on the stage. Kind of looks like Sylvester Stallone, kind of buff, Italian guy, hair slicked back. And he usually cuts the shirt here, kind of like to show off the muscles a little bit. And so that's Chuck. It seems like him and Dana are good again, because for a while, and he's told us this. He said he had to sort Dana out once because Dana had made a promise to him about tickets and he wasn't delivering when the sports started to blow up. So for a while they weren't jiving, but it seems like they're jiving because he's on the stage during the ceremonial weigh-ins. He was a fun interview, man. Thank you for the question, Lazy Bed. Chris Goes Wild. I don't watch the WCS, but I heard about Dana White shitting on Torrez Finney. If Dana thinks he needs more fights out of the UFC, the WCS, why is he entertaining having Finney? Okay, that's a good question. You're right. Why is he having them again? It turns out Torrez Finney went on SiriusXM's Fight Nation, our former home. Shout out to those guys. He went on and told them that after what Dana White Contender Series, he was considering going on The Ultimate Fighter. The Ultimate Fighter producers told him you can't fight. They kind of like freeze you, right? And so that blocked some time where he was trying out for The Ultimate Fighter. He thought he was going to get in. In the end, he didn't get in. And so he kind of lost time there. Then he got rebooked again because I think they sort that out in like February or March. But Dana White Contender Series starts in July, right? Or August. And so by then they started sorting out the new season and he realized he was going to be on the new season. So he didn't take another fight. So he kind of had some reasoning. Maybe he could have snuck one in. I don't know. But he certainly couldn't sneak in 3 or 4. And when Dana White found out about it, he was actually like, oh, I didn't know that. And he kind of like, my bad. So I think that's why he's showing him a little bit of love. And my money's on the fact that if he makes it, I don't see how they don't bring him in for at least a 4-fight contract. Remember, they can cut you off any loss, but they'll probably give him 2 shots and then see what happens. But that dude really wants to be in the UFC, and those slams are pretty nice. He's not the most exciting fighter in the world, but I've seen other fighters in the UFC that are less exciting. Okay. What else do you guys got? What more questions do you got? Matthew Chalk. Would you rather have had Ngannou for the rest of career or John Jones? And who fights more? Is Dana having buyer's remorse knowing he could have possibly gotten more fights out of Ngannou? This is a great segue. And I'm going to tell you something in just a second. I'm going to blast through a couple, and then I'm going to come back to this one because I'm going to spend some time on this one. Chris Goes Wild. Alex Fajeda and Magomed Ankalaev have gone back and forth over who ducked who. Is it possible they're both being played by the UFC and neither of them really know the story? Look, Ankalaev has been chasing the champion, whether it's Fajeda or Blachowicz or whoever, Yuri, for years. So I bet you they're both telling a certain story, but sometimes a fighter's just not ready. So what they say is, I'll give you an example. It just happened recently with Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad won on July 27th. And they already offered him a fight for October 7th against Shavkat. So Shavkat saying he's ducking because they offered Shavkat Bilal Muhammad on October 7th. He said, yup. He hasn't fought since November 2023. He's ready to go. He's undefeated. He's finished everyone he's fought. He's ready. It ain't Usman. It ain't Jack Della Maddalena or Ian Gary. It's him. He's ready. But Bilal's going, fuck. I won on July 27th. I went to Abu Dhabi, the Middle East, and celebrated. Remember, they had the card out in Abu Dhabi with Umar Nurmagomedov and Corey Sandhagen. He was there, spent some time there, came back to Chicago in early August, mid-August. He said he was there for 2 weeks. So mid-August was just 2 weeks ago. He's probably still shaking things off, in terms of that 5-round fight that he had. He told us about a week ago. It's on the YouTube channel. Check it out. Good interview, I think. They're all good when we do them. He said, I'll be ready in December would be perfect, but I will do November. That's not much to ask out of a guy that just won and was made to wait. Remember, he hadn't fought since the year before against Gilbert Burns. He waited over a year for his title shot, and he had like a 9-10 fight win streak. So he's probably feeling kind of like, he's got a chip on his shoulder. Like, hey, settle down, everyone, settle down. I just got back to Chicago. So see how there's an interpretation where Bilal might have just said, yeah, I'll fight Shafkat, not on that date. Then Shafkat's out there going, he's ducking me. Well, in a sense, for that one fight, okay, if that's how you interpret it, he turned it down. But that might have happened with Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Pereira. Alex Pereira, dude, that guy's fought so much. He's got 4 fights that fit the criteria of World MMA Awards. World MMA Awards goes July 1st, 2023 until June 30th of 2024. Alex Pereira had 4 fights in that calendar year. So, yeah, he's probably gotten a lot of offers and had to decline some for one reason or another, or who knows, I don't know. But I would say Ankalaev's been on the chase, and he probably I think the UFC goofed this up because Dana puts Ankalaev against Rakic, right, in October, and then he gives Pereira Roundtree. And when they ask him about it, they go, why didn't you do Ankalaev? Why'd you do Roundtree? You know what he said? Ankalaev's been booked. And he kind of almost like was condescending. Like, hello, Ankalaev's been booked against Roundtree. And of course, the media doesn't show up to fight with Dana White. But I know some of them are going, bitch, you got a war room with yellow dots and blue dots, and this guy's from the Ultimate Fighter, and this guy's from Contender Series. You know it all. And you got 2 excellent matchmakers, and then Hunter Campbell, who's becoming probably the next you. Someone could have told you before you did Ankalaev and Roundtree or Rakic, whoa. If we do him, wouldn't he make sense against Pereira in Salt Lake City? That had to have been discussed. But Dana's an excellent promoter. He knows how to give you an answer and then move on. And that's what happened was Ankalaev had been booked. It's true. But why wasn't he booked against Pereira if they were looking to fill that, right? Maybe they were trying to fill that with Muhammad and Shafkat. Couldn't do that, so they had to do the Abu Dhabi card. Plus, remember what I said about Chimaev? What was my reaction? Whitaker against Chimaev. We don't have confidence in Chimaev. If Makhachev ain't on the card because he's injured and Chimaev's iffy, Magomed Ankalaev's a nice fighter to feature on the card there, right? He's popular in that side of the planet. So a lot of it has to do with, how's this benefit the UFC or whatever. So I don't think anyone was ducking anyone, but I think they had a little bit of a fault in that. And then I'll get back to the question I was going to answer about the heavyweights because, again, Matthew Chalk had a great question. I want to spend some time with it. Rakid, George, do you know if the February 25th fight, Saudi Arabia card, will be a pay-per-view card? Ooh, possibly UFC 312. Oh, boy. Do I know that one? I don't have the list. I have takes me through 310 at the end of the year. So let me think about this. It's the opposite side of the world. You know that they don't like having those pay-per-view cards that start really late for the local audience. You saw what happened in Manchester. That was a catastrophe. 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. main card. Come on. You don't want to do that very often. So I would say that's on ABC. If I had to guess, they haven't gotten a pay-per-view. Abu Dhabi gets the pay-per-views. But they're big, man. Riyadh season, right? They're the ones that are sponsoring UFC 306 coming up in Vegas. So it could be. it's a possibility that might be one, but I can't confirm it. I don't know. If any of my colleagues are listening and they know, hit me up and then I'll pass it on. But I don't have an answer for you. But it's a great question. I can see it as a big ABC show or whatever, because I don't think they want to do too many of those. See, notice the Abu Dhabi cards are early starts for us on that. Those are their partners, and I don't think they want them showing up from 3 to 6 a.m. Manchester United, yeah, go ahead. But Abu Dhabi, no. We're respectful of prime time. Early show for North America. All right, let's go back to this other one here. Matthew Chalk. He wants to know about the heavyweights. Let's start off with, would I rather have Ngannou for the rest of her career or John Jones? Well, you probably want me to answer the question based off when they hadn't released Ngannou yet. Ngannou is all you could ever ask out of a heavyweight. I mean, a smashing machine, right? Excuse me. He's just destroying everybody. And he's got the build. He's the baddest man on the planet at that point. Jones he's already given up his belt. He's the GOAT. We give him that. But he was inactive for 3 years. But at the time, he had the baddest man on the planet. It wasn't Tyson Fury. It wasn't Usage. No one else. It wasn't even the WWE champ. It was no one. It was Francis Ngannou. I think Dana White really liked that. He just, like I say, he had the look, everything. And he was a finisher. I think at that point, he would have rather it worked with Ngannou. His history with Jones hasn't been that great. That's why it surprises us that he's trumping Jones so much as of late, because Jones has let him down many times, whether it's the PED stuff, and I know some of it's been minor, picograms. He said the other day picograms are allowed, but he's had some other issues as well. And whether it's that or the legal troubles, right? I think he would have rather kept Ngannou. You had the baddest man on the planet, and Jones was unreliable. So, and you had gotten so much out of Jones that even if Jones sails off into the sunset, you can go, that's the GOAT. So I would say Ngannou, because heavyweights go a little longer as well. And I don't know if this shoulder is the beginning of the end, like the wear and tear on Jones, because he's been through some battles, man. Again, I think he's the GOAT. He's legit. But I don't like the last few years how he's played those out. I think he played his hand wrong, and that would go for a few other fighters as well. The Diaz brothers, McGregor, they just, some of those prime years, man, where they could have really added to or possibly have lost, right? And made some real good coin. They elected to breathe, enjoy, and that's fine too. But I think they missed out. And then when they miss it, they come back and it ain't the same. The young cats will swallow you up. And I think Jones knows that could happen against Aspinall, and that's why he's not interested in Aspinall. He's interested in Miocic. That would be 2-0 at heavyweights if he beats Miocic, but one of them would be the greatest of all time. The other one would be a former interim heavyweight champ. I go off into the sunset as the greatest ever. It'll be tough to touch my records. Cristiano Ronaldo's doing that. He wants to make sure no one touches his records. That's why he's so consumed with goals and this and that and accomplishments. I mean, it's too bad because I think Lionel Messi's going to go down as the greatest ever. But that's what John Jones wants to do, is just pad. And it's going to be tough to beat him, honestly. It really is. So does he stick around for Aspinall? You know, it's a great payday. I think those guys could fight at Wembley Stadium. I thought Ngannou and Jones could fight at Wembley Stadium, or even here in Las Vegas in the stadium here, Allegiant Stadium. It's that big of a fight. But he just wants Miocic. He's focused on Miocic, and now at one point he was saying maybe I do stick around, and now recently he's been saying I'll be retired at 37, which implies he'll be done this year. So now let's talk about the remorse part of the question. I don't know if he's having remorse, because if he would have allowed Ngannou to go box, Now that's McGregor and Ngannou that were given that special permission. Now O'Malley starts to ask, and future fighters start to ask. Granted, he can always say no. He can always say those were isolated incidents. The McGregor hysteria was incredible, and he matched up about the same time as Mayweather was winding down. That's why they did it, and it was huge. And the UFC had a part of it. They made money, but I felt they could have made money if they would have backed Ngannou and said, "All right, we know that the other one was an isolated incident, but we can't turn our backs on this one. Ngannou is a heavy hitter. When it comes to the heavyweights, anything can happen. He came from boxing before he was an MMA fighter, so he has a little bit of a base there, more than what McGregor had. And Fury's a big name, and we'll get behind our guy and we'll promote it. We'll all make some money, but we're going to keep Big Fran. Once he's done, we'll bring him back. No need to go back against Anthony Joshua. And now you fight Jones or whoever's here. That's how I think they should have done it. But I guess Ngannou wanted other stuff. Ngannou said, hey, they didn't even give me one thing that I asked for. That's kind of what pissed them off. Was then it became a little bit of a respect thing. But I think if they would have given him that one, he might have backed off, stayed with the UFC. Think about the hit that thing would have been. The fight against Fury. Dana would have been there promoting this guy. He would have had a case for, we thought we won. Then he brings him back. Would have felt good to represent that, that well. The MMA guy to represent that well. I think it would have felt good for the UFC. They would have made some coin. Francis, everyone. And then we move on. We're back to MMA. So I think they misplayed their hand. Now, here's the part I want to chat about. Dana White is on this crusade of saying Jon Jones is the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. He has an argument. It's not like he's crazy. The media saying, well, he's a badass, Dana. We'll give it to you. Hell, we're calling him the GOAT. He's the heavyweight champ. He's the former light heavyweight champ. Most title defenses tied with Demetrius Johnson at 11. All that, right? But he hasn't fought in 18 months. Actually, we're starting to get closer to 2 years and further away from 18 months, I think. Well, no, it's about 18 months. I take it back. But by the time he fights, if he fights in November, I think it'll be 20 months, 21 months, getting closer to 2 years. Why hasn't that fight been announced? I don't know. I guess they haven't been ready yet. Are there rumors of Miocic being out? Did Jon Jones fully recover? I don't know. When Dana first said, we're not going to strip him, he said he'll be back in 8 months. Those 8 months have come and gone. He's still not back. There are setbacks with shoulder injuries, that's for sure. But where Dana is getting it all wrong is, I think he wants to boast that he has the baddest man on the planet. But he's going the route of saying, we got the pound for pound champion. And the media is not wrong in saying homeboy hasn't fought in 18 months. And prior to that fight against Gane, which went his way, he hadn't fought for 3 years. And he was coming off controversial wins over Dominic Reyes, who Dana White said, I thought Dominic Reyes won. Kevin Iole pointed that out to him the other day. And Thiago Santos, who took him to a split decision. Now, the win's a win, right? Okay. Still undefeated aside from the disqualification years ago. But when a lot of people are doing their rankings, you have criteria. For example, USA Today Sports and MMA Junkie, at 2 years, we take a look and we punch you if you just haven't fought because of injury, you're holding out, you're dabbling in another sport, whatever. It's not, right at the dot. Like Juliana Pena's still in ours, but she's fighting. She's got something on the books. Also, during COVID, we were extending the lifeline a little bit because COVID was a whole other animal. We didn't even know when the sport was going to come back. So we're a little bit flexible there, right? Others will punch you after a year. But he just flat out hasn't fought. And everyone's got different criteria. Some people are like, if he hasn't fought here, if he's not active, then he's out. So some people may not even have him at all. It's not even an argument of 1 and 2, 1 and 3. It's just we don't have him at all. I think Dana's getting it wrong because what I think Dana should say is, remember, he always says if they go into a room, Jon Jones is coming out. What he's trying to say is, I got the baddest man on the planet. He should just let go of pound for pound. It could be Islam. It could be Pereira, whoever. He did go overboard, too, when he said, I think Jon Jones is the greatest combat sports athlete, bar none, in the history. Ooh, that one's tough. That one's tough. But he's controversial. Dana's like that. He's controversial, and he's really good at debate. So I haven't heard anyone really go back and forth with him on that one. They just go back and forth with him on pound for pound. But I think if he were to say, if John Jones goes into that room with anyone else, does he come out? Does he come out if he goes in there with Aspinall? Some people say no. Does he come out if he goes in there with Francis? Some people say no. But Francis hasn't fought in 2.5 years in MMA. He might have some ring rust in that street fight, in that closet fight, or whatever it's called. But that, I think, is his argument, is he wants to boast, I am the baddest man on the planet. So that people forget that the baddest man on the planet left you to go with PFL and left you to box and left you to go make more money. Where arguably he was successful, even though he's 0-2. Some people feel like he's 1-1 because he represented against Fury, right? He didn't leave because he got beaten. He just left. So he hasn't left coming off his loss. So he's got a big fight coming up against Renan Fajeda. If he loses that one, Dana White's going to be happy as a clam. And if Jones loses to Miocic, then I guess he's got the greatest heavyweight of all time and the baddest man on the planet, because Miocic technically is 1-1 against Ngannou. Even though he retires that night, then he's left with Aspinall. So he still has the baddest man on the planet. But anyway, I think that's what stings him the most, is he just doesn't have the baddest man on the planet right now. If John had backed it up by beating Gon, which Francis did too, but John finished him, and then he had beaten like one or two others, then he could flex, right? I don't even know if this has to do with, ESPN, because ESPN has PFL and UFC. Hey, Dana, you sure you got all the baddest asses? We got PFL too. They got Ngannou. Wasn't he your guy? And he's destroying. And I don't know. I don't know if it's an ego thing or what it is, but he's consumed by it. So I think that's really where you should leave it. I'll leave you with this part. And if you guys want to bring it back and you have follow-ups, go ahead. I'll get to some more questions right now. I promise. I'll blast through some of these. But in boxing, I was talking about this with Goes. Pound for pound, the best boxers on the planet right now are probably Inoue, the Japanese boxer, who's like a featherweight, I think, and Terrence Crawford, who's a welterweight. So what if they went into a room with Usyk, the heavyweight champ, or Anthony Joshua, or Tyson Fury? Who's coming out? Inoue? No. Crawford? Sorry, bud. It ain't going to be you. The heavyweight's going to take you out. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not really that big of a deal to beat pound for pound. It just kind of means like you're the most pure fighter given any weight class of your sport. And a lot of respect comes with that. So many fighters used to heap that on Demetrius Johnson. He was the smallest guy in the room. Pound for pound, this guy's it, man. Title defenses, he's active, he's smashing, he rules his division. But, a lot of the Joneses and Woodleys and whoever was champ at that time, Weidmans, I don't know. Of course, they knew that they could probably beat Demetrius Johnson in a street fight. That's what Dana White should focus on, is I got the baddest man on the planet. Don't worry about pound for pound. And no one's not arguing that he's the GOAT. Maybe there's a few people out there going, it's GSP still, or Fedor, or Anderson. But 90%, 95% of the planet has pretty much said it's Jones. Even though he's got the PD allegations against him, it's Jones. Once he won the second title, he joined an exclusive club, right? So 90 to 95% of the planet says Jones is the greatest of all time. You should be happy with that. And he's your heavyweight champ. But is he forget about pound for pound. Alex Fajeda's got a nice case now, too. He's got the second title defenses. Not as many as Jones, but still. And here's where I think he went a little overboard, since I mentioned Fajeda's name. He's the greatest combat sports athlete of all time. Why? He won the UFC light heavyweight belt, defended 11 times, and now he won the UFC heavyweight belt. That's impressive. Impressive. He's in the conversation. You're allowed into the discussion, John Jones. But didn't Henry Cejudo do the same thing? Maybe not the 11 title defenses, but he won 2 titles, and he also defended both. John's yet to defend the heavyweight. He defended both, and he won a freaking gold medal in the Olympics in freestyle wrestling. That's hard to do. Think about how great a wrestlers Daniel Cormier, Randy Couture, Ben Askren, whoever, right? All these guys that have either been on the podium, won national titles, made the international team, made the Olympic team. But I don't think any of them won a gold medal. He won a gold medal and 2 titles and defended them both. All right. So Henry Cejudo, no, I don't like him. Shut up. Don't bring his name up again. Okay. Alex Fajeda, Glory kickboxing champ, middleweight and light heavyweight. I believe defended both. And now he's done that in MMA. That's 2 high-level sports, world titles, multiple divisions with title defense. He didn't defend the UFC middleweight title, but still, he won it. That's pretty damn impressive too. He's in the conversation. So is Cejudo. Who else has done impressive stuff like that? I mean, Kayla Harrison, 2 gold medals in judo, 1 in the world championships. Then she's got the lightweight title at PFL 2 times. Now she wins the bantamweight title in the UFC. She's in the conversation. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And now that's without me leaving out your Muhammad Ali's, your Sugar Ray Robinsons, because he said combat sports. Your Alexander Karelins, remember the Russian Greco-Roman wrestler who won like 4 gold medals before he lost to Roland Gardner? How about that Cuban who just won 5? Only problem is those guys is just the one sport. Dan Henderson. Look what Dan Henderson did. What hurts him, though, are some of the losses. That's my favorite fighter of all time. Olympian in 1992 in Barcelona, Greco-Roman, and then didn't medal, but still All-American in collegiate wrestling, wrestled on the international level, and then he comes to MMA and he won the open weight rings King of Kings tournament. Open weight. This is a guy that recited at middleweight most of his career. About even with light heavyweight, but still. And he won the open weight tournament. There was some heavyweights in that one too. He also won the Pride welterweight Grand Prix, the welterweight title, the middleweight title, the Strikeforce light heavyweight title, and he fought twice for the UFC middleweight title. Came up short against Michael Bisping and Anderson Silva. But he did win a UFC tournament. I think it was UFC 13. Back then, there was no title, so it's almost like that was a belt. He does hold a UFC belt. It's just back in the tournament days. So a little bit of wrestling, and then all those accolades in multiple divisions. Pretty amazing too. So I can't give him that one. I can't give him that one when it comes to Jones is the greatest one of all time. That takes time to really, really decipher, but I figured those are a few names off the top of my head where I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know about that one. Let's continue here. If you have any follow-ups, let me know. Sorry, I know I ramble. Chris Goes Wild. Well, we got to that one already. If you had every MMA fighter of Mexican descent in their prime available to you, who is the most ideal representative to main event a Noche UFC event? MMA. So he stuck to MMA. Mexican descent. So born in Mexico, I think you mean, not Mexican American. I would say it's got to be Brandon Moreno, the first Mexican-born champion. He would be the ideal representative to main event. Yeah, because he said in their prime available. So I'm saying Brandon Moreno when he was champ, that's who I would have wanted for Noche UFC. Luckily, he did it in Mexico City. But yeah, this would have been perfect. If not him, man, this sounds cold, but I suppose because see, Grasso could do it, but why isn't she doing it? She's got a formidable foe, an all-time great in Valentina Shevchenko. Why isn't she there? Part of it is a business, right? It's got to sell tickets. She's Mexican-born. Great-looking fighter to feature, but why isn't she there? So I suppose Rodriguez would be next. Yeah, but Marino, I think, is the answer to your question. Okay, sorry, that's just an answer to someone else. Let's see here. Who do I think Charles Oliveira's next opponent will be? Blonde Dan Hangman Hooker, Volkanovski, or Colby Covington? Hooker. I think it'll be Hooker. The only thing is how serious is Makhachev's injury? If Makhachev's injury is so serious that he has to be put aside and Sarukian needs to stay busy via the interim route, which I think they've said they're not going to do that, or just a number one contender fight, then I could see Oliveira getting pulled into a situation like that. But I really like the Hooker Oliveira matchup. Volkanovski, no, because I don't want to see Volkanovski anymore as a lightweight. He did great in that first title fight, but featherweight's his division. We shouldn't write him off. He won 3 over Holloway. Holloway was written off, and look who's fighting for the title in October. Holloway. You just got to sit back, take other fights, see how things shake out. If Holloway beats Topuria, guess who's back in play? The guy that beat him 3 times, I imagine, right? Unless it's a classic and they got to run it back. But Volkanovski could be in play. Now, Volkanovski will probably have to take a fight on. And right now, the more time away from that February knockout following the October knockout, back-to-back knockouts, the better you'll heal. And we're now getting into September. He's not on a card, so we see him in December. That's almost a year. That's pretty good. I think he's done well. I think him and the UFC have done well managing that. But yeah, he'll probably have to take on another fighter, win, and if he does and Holloway wins, he's back in play. If Topuria wins, I don't know. He might have to take one more. Colby Covington, he should just fight welterweights. So no, Oliveira and Covington, I don't see that needing to happen. I think Covington should just fight like one of the young guys, either Della Maddalena, Ian Gary. Give them a shot. The Gary one would be good because they chirp back and forth a lot. I do like Maddalena against Muhammad, but I think Shavkat makes the most sense. There's so many rumors out there. Shavkat versus Usman. Who knows? But there's enough talent there. Moving on. MMA holes. The MMA holes. His pay-per-view would be gone. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice if we just didn't have pay-per-views anymore? And someone like ESPN or TBS just came in and gave them a lot of money to have fights. The same way we watch NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl on CBS, ABC, ESPN for so many years. Just turn the TV on and watch fights. And we'll pay you the money you would have made from pay-per-views. We were just talking about the other day or yesterday, Goes and I. We're watching, this is his story. He's watching Liverpool and Manchester United with a buddy. And I think they're either playing a video game, so they're on the headset, or they're texting. But they both had an agreement that if something happens on their end, you wait like 30 seconds and then say something. Because with streaming, you can be like 30 seconds ahead and go, oh, fuck, they scored. And then you tell the other guy, man, you guys are lucky. You scored it, and then you blew it for that guy. So that's the streaming world does get on my nerves, how some of us are ahead of the others. And I just love the beam of a satellite, man, and we're all on the same page at the same time. And that would be legit if someone just stepped up. That would be a huge, huge contract. You know that Craig Borsari guy? He doesn't take many questions. He doesn't do media. The UFC was very proud of I think it was 7 years, 700 million. Was it with Fox or UFC or ESPN? I can't remember. One of those. And they were talking about it. And around that time, the NBA had done a like $24 billion contract or something like that. And I was like, don't you aspire to do one of those? Maybe not to that level, right? And it was for 8 years or 12 years, I forget. Don't you aspire to do one of those and then bring in more eyeballs and I guess the pay-per-views, you don't have to worry so much about it, right? It has been lucrative. But that to me seemed like, because he was happy and content, like they had hit a home run. But because I follow other sports, I see that English Premier, NBA, NFL, they sign way bigger television contracts where they can get all these eyeballs, right? And then funnel it back to the athletes. That seems to me like what would be the goal. How can I argue with a company that's now worth 14 billion though? Back then they hadn't sold yet, so still in that 4 billion range, which is still super impressive. But if you matched up TV contracts, man, what the big four, or at least NBA and NFL were doing, and even soccer, smashes what the UFC's done with ESPN. I hope the UFC does well with the next one that they do with ESPN or whoever it may be, whether they go to Netflix or wherever they go. I hope they smash it, right? And I hope more money goes to the athletes. But he brought up that comment and made me think of that. Do I like this new approach from Aspinall? This comes from Don Vito. Do I like the new approach from Aspinall? Do you think it will tempt Jones into fighting him? I do like the new approach from Aspinall. You got to go down swinging, right? Somehow piss the guy off. I think there's boundaries, obviously, and he's been keeping it light and fun and colorful. So yeah, I'm good with it. Jones does seem to be very stable. They couldn't even talk him into fighting Chael Sonnen once Dan Henderson backed out of whatever it was, UFC 126 or something like that. He said, "No, we didn't prepare for Sonnen. We prepared for Dan Henderson." Both wrestlers, by the way, but yeah, one was more stand-up wrestler, the other one was more freestyle wrestler. Him and Greg Jackson said no, and they stuck to their guns. John seems pretty set in his ways in that regard, so I don't think whatever Aspinall says will tempt him. What'll tempt him is money. So if Jones is doing all this for money, I applaud him because he missed out on a lot of money. I think a lot of MMA fighters have. The UFC makes a lot of money, and you are the UFC's your best friend when you're young and starting out, and they treat you great, and you haven't had much money in your life, and now you do. Right? You feel like a millionaire, but in reality, you're not. Not compared to these other athletes that I see. Anthony Davis, last year for the Lakers, signed a 3-year, $180 million extension. That's $60 million a year. If Anthony Davis goes, I sprained my knee, and he doesn't play for a month, he still gets paid. Guaranteed $60 million a year. That's when you've made it. Kevin Durant was with the Warriors, and he signed with New Jersey. They signed him knowing he had either torn his Achilles or his ACL. I can't remember. I think it was an Achilles. They knew they weren't even going to get him for a year, and he got a guaranteed salary because he's that good, and they just wanted to lock him up. But that's a great contract. What the NBA and MLB have, guaranteed even through injury, those are great. NFL's different. You get that big bonus up front, but it's also a lot of it's not guaranteed. Some of it's guaranteed. Not all of it. CD Lamb just signed for the Cowboys. What is it? 4 years, $136 million. I think the guy from the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk, signed for $75 million guaranteed, but less than CD. I think it's 4 years, 120 million. So more of his up front, less than CD Lamb. So some of it's guaranteed, but a lot of it isn't. Well, that's a more violent sport. So these MMA athletes, they start rubbing elbows and finding things out, and then all of a sudden it becomes personal to them, and they realize what they might have missed out on. The UFC knows this. The UFC knows this, but that's the game. A grown man signed that contract. The UFC didn't force them to sign, but they do have leverage. You want to sit out? Go ahead, sit out. Go ahead, Nick Diaz, sit out. Has UFC missed Nick Diaz? They would have liked to have him, but did they miss him? McGregor hasn't fought in 3 years. Have they missed him? Well, yes, but are they still rolling in the dough? Selling pay-per-view? Yep. It's a machine, man. So a lot of fighters that choose to sit that one out, ooh, that's not really the way. That's not how you use your leverage. It usually doesn't work out. I think a lot of what McGregor's being held back on has to do with money. Or the leg just hasn't healed and they want to tell us everything. But I think it's probably more money. He knows there's not many left, so he wants to cash in. And poor Michael Chandler's on the other end of that. Although Chandler did tweet or something like that he's got news coming up. Don't forget, every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for the next 8 or so weeks during Dana White Contender Series, This is the time where we do the Spinning Back Click Show. Myself and my colleagues at MMA Junkie, we unpack the biggest stories of the week, previews fights that are coming up, go over the results that have just happened. And it's a fun quality show. You can, if you're on the YouTube channel, you can go back and see last week's stream just to get an idea, and then hit the like, and click the subscribe button so you'll be alerted to future shows when they're live. And I know you hear that all the time, but it really does help the algorithm. Like if a bunch of people hit like right now, which is not much to ask for, honestly, but if you did, there's a chance that when someone just goes on YouTube, we might be on that front page or somehow shuffled in. That's why it's important. Honestly, every YouTube show I go on to just be entertained, sports, politics, any other stuff, anime, whatever, jokes, podcasts, I always hit the like. Just, I know it helps them. And some of them don't need it, but I still do it. I always do it to them, and I just hope everyone does it for us. So I'm asking, if you can, hit the like button. Let's see how many more we can get to. Brian John says, DWCS fighters make 5 and 5 to show and win. Feels like the UFC is incentivized to make guys come back to get more out of them for cheap like they did Bo Nickel. Well, they know that's the way in. So it's a nice carrot to dangle. Let's see here. Racket says, who do you think the co-main event at 309 at MSG? Another title shot. Good question. John Jones versus Miocic. Let's go with that. And the co-main event would be, maybe it has something to do with that Chandler tweet. Didn't Poirier say he's got one more in him? So I could see Chandler versus Poirier. They've been chirping at each other. It could be McGregor versus anyone, but I don't think McGregor would be on that card. Although him and John seem to get along. Conor likes to flex and not allow other champs to be on his cards too often. I don't know why. Let them enjoy some of the pay-per-views you provide. So great question. Chandler versus Poirier, Hooker versus Oliveira. I'd like to see a lightweight matchup there, or whoever misses out on the Belal Muhammad sweepstakes, Usman versus Della Maddalena, if it's Shavkat. Someone in the middleweight or I'm sorry, welterweight or lightweight in the co-main event would be perfect. That's my guess. Scott Christian says, George, are we in the PFL playoff era? Yet still, they are getting very little MMA coverage from all the media outlets. On top of that, Bellator events are becoming rare. Does this foreshadow PFL's fall? It's a great question in the sense that I don't know about their fall, but I think the format needs to go. I think it worked its charm for however long it lasted to kind of stick out and do something different. But I think they could evolve. And I think what they could do is blend the Bellator and PFL models. Here's what I mean. PFL in 2025 should say, we are now an arena series, like the UFC. We go to arenas, we have cards, and we'll start with maybe one show a month, I guess. They might do more. 2 shows a month? Maybe do 2 pay-per-views a year. And just get those faces out there to different cities, hopefully stay on ESPN, and give us your best cards possible using the Bellator and the PFL roster. So you crown your official heavyweight champion, not the 2022 champ and the 2023 champ. That's done. However, as that's going, you say, how in 2025, we have no middleweight division. We're going to grab the best 8, and they're going to have a Grand Prix. And at the end of the year, we'll crown the new middleweight champion going forward. It's kind of like a Grand Prix. So that's kind of what Bellator does. They choose a weight class, $1 million for the winner, whatever. You start with Eblin. You bring back Kasanganai from light heavyweight, and then 6 others, and you just run it. Someone will get a milli, someone will get a belt, and then all the other weight classes are unfolding, right? I would do that. A little bit of both. Always have one weight class that's doing a Grand Prix. So that's your playoff, your regular season playoff, except we call it a Grand Prix. It sounds better. And then you just make the most out of your roster. And then in 2026, we'll bring in the women's strawweights or the bantamweights or whatever. And then the rest of the weight classes do what they got to do. It's been an hour and 10. So I'm just going to look, and if I can get to a couple more, I'll blast through them quickly. I mean, I'm not pressed for time. I don't know if you guys are. Rick Allen says, something on your mind? Oh, okay. Goes over, hovering over me like a vulture. Hey, Goes, can you put on the AC? I'm dying over here. All right. Rick Allen says, why is Michael Chandler so obsessed with adopting black kids? Oh, come on, man. Dude, why not just, I have a lot of friends and family that are negative. And I know this is your chance to be funny, but I actually want to tackle this. I think it's awesome that Michael Chandler has adopted anyone. All right. Years ago, I remember Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie did this. Now they had their own kids, but they also adopted kids. Man, anytime you can change someone's life like that, I just think it's tremendous. He told a story once that his wife, I guess, either had dreams or visions of one day actually adopting. And I guess in that vision, it was a black kid. And so if I'm not mistaken, how he tells the story is they were looking, but that's just the way things lined up, and it was perfect for them, So I think it's tremendous that he's done it. And if he has more, God bless him and his family. But I would say wake up every morning, Rick Allen. If this was the last one in your asshole era or whatever, fine, you went out with a bang. But wake up tomorrow and be positive and be happy for people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be happy for you if you private message me and say, hey man, guess what? I have this business and it's doing well. And I caught your show. I'm probably gonna shoot you back. What's your business? I hope it does well. And if I'm ever there, if it's a restaurant, I'll visit it or whatever. And then hopefully you'll say, hey, the Q&A was pretty good. You should do more of them. It did well. And I'm gonna tell my friends. Like, it's so much of an easier way to live life, honestly. Big dude from the Green Mile was Michael Clark Duncan. That's right. Chris goes wild. He saved me. That's who it was. He wasn't a nice person. He was one of the early fans, but there's JT Schmitz in Anaheim, California, in front of the what used to be called, it's called the Honda Center now. It used to be called the Arrowhead Pond of Anaheim. And I saw him once, and we were all kind of dining together. He wasn't in my group or nothing. And I think everyone looked at their watches and said, hey, prelims are going to start, and everyone was going to walk across the street and go, because you could tell a lot of people were leaving at the same time. So he was there, and I think I asked him something simple like, hey, who do you like in tonight's fight, And I can't remember the answer he gave me, but it was just, he just kind of looked at me almost like I should have said, Mr. Duncan, sir, if I may have the privilege of asking you a question. Like, he gave me that type of a look. And that the kind of an answer was kind of dry. And I'm like, damn, bro. Like, I didn't even ask you for a selfie or an autograph. I just, we're all moving. You're going to the fights. I know you know who you think's gonna win, and it was just kind of rude. I don't know. I had a bad interaction with Mia Hamm as well. I think Goes was at that one, or no, I might have just told him about it. Remember the soccer star for the United States? I want to answer some more questions, otherwise I would tell you guys this story. But yeah, she was rude. Tyler Blaze. Is Colby versus Dustin in the works, in your opinion? And do you think that fight would garner enough attention to be in the main event? Remember earlier? Thank you, Tyler. You came through Facebook. Thank you for tuning in. Remember earlier when I said Colby should stick to welterweight? Dustin, and I also said Dustin says he has one more left. But it sounded like Dustin goes the route of, I won't give you any shine if you don't deserve it. So I don't know if Dustin would do this, but tying it into another question, what could co-headline New York? This could. But see, man, Jones despises Colby Covington, so I could see him flexing and saying, "I don't want him on my card." So that's why I shoot the matchup in New York. I don't shoot the possibility because it's big time, you know. And if the UFC incentivizes Poirier, maybe they'll do it. And Poirier just hung with a really tough wrestler in Islam Makhachev, who's not a welterweight. But Colby has shown us he might have declined. He didn't look as good off the layoff and against Leon Edwards. This isn't as big of a mismatch as I would have thought it was 3 years ago because Colby's bigger and he just seemed to manhandle people. All right. Parent taken. Buyer's remorse from the bag fumbling illegal immigrant. I got to look at these before I put them up. You think that Ngannou is an illegal immigrant? I don't know why you think that. Okay. Jake the Snake, yo George, Mr. George. I don't really watch your stuff too much because there's so much content, but I always enjoy your content. Thank you. Thank you. That makes up for the other two twats that just came through. I appreciate that, Jake the Snake. Every Monday, you can catch Spinning Back Click with me and the colleagues. They're the stars. I just lob it to them and they slam dunk it. For 1 hour and change, we unpack the biggest stories. It's usually noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, but while Dana White Contender Series is going on, it'll be 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And I'm filling in today for Labor Day because the guys and gal have the day off. So shout out to Ray Perez in the chat room. Beastman, how's it going, George? It's going well, Beastman. Isn't Beastman? I mean, I don't think this guy's it, but isn't Beastman or Mr. Beast the biggest person on YouTube? Imagine if that was him. West Coast, Francis hasn't fought in almost 3 years. You're right. It'll be like 2 3/4 by the time him and Renan Fajeda fight. And when they fight, it's going to be a good one. I'm more excited about that one than Jones Miocic, believe it or not. Because if Renan wins, Renan will have been the 2023 PFL champion. He beat Ryan Bader in the champ versus champ deal that they had earlier this year. And if he can beat Francis Ngannou, a former UFC heavyweight champion, arguably the baddest man on the planet, hell, Renan Fajeda's in that conversation now. That's some badass accomplishments. But all that would only make sense if Jones loses to Miocic and Miocic retires. Because if Miocic beats Jones, he can say, I'm the baddest man on the planet. But then once he retires, we give you your flowers. That's a hell of a career, Miocic. See ya. But now Aspinall gets anointed. And now is it Aspinall or Fajeda? I don't know. It'll depend who looked good, in the process. That's why those two fights coming up, October 19th, PFL, Goes and I will be doing a watch along for that as well. And the card in New York, which we think is going to be Jones versus Miocic. That's why they're like less than a month apart. Those are going to be big. If you're just tuning in, I'm doing a Q&A here. And if you have a question, get it in quick because I'm about to bounce. Rat Kid says, George, since we see that Krylov is available too and fighting at 309, can we agree that UFC protects Fajeda from wrestler grappler who can submit him? One could think that. Even Krylov is more than legit than Roundtree. Krylov hadn't fought in about 18 months, I think. He had a 3-fight win streak. But to be fair to Roundtree, he's got a 5-fight win streak. The problem is Krylov and Ankalaev, who we brought up earlier, they've been mixing it up against top 10 guys for years now, whereas Roundtree really hasn't. So therefore, even though it's 5 wins in a row, 4 finishes, he's fun to watch. It's not the worst thing in the world when you really look at it, right? It's those big names that have been missing. Now, who does that remind you of? Steve Erceg. Wait, why did he get it? He hasn't really mixed it up with any of the big names. Next thing you know, he's fighting Alexander Pantoja through 5 rounds in Rio de Janeiro and looking pretty damn good. See, that's where the UFC is lucky in the sense that, man, sometimes 2 fighters can just throw on a classic and it makes them look good, bails them out. Because if that fight had been shitty, we all would have said, well, what were you expecting? Erceg hadn't really earned that position, right? But it turned out to be a pretty decent fight. So that was that. Now, Roundtree might turn out to be a pretty decent fight. But I would agree. Krylov has just mixed it up with bigger names, and Ankalaev was more deserving because he's also hasn't lost. And has mixed it up with some big names. But I gave my reasons earlier. This is all available to you if you want to hit a replay. I talked about it in like the first 10, 15 minutes. What else we got? Will Chandler Connor ever happen? This comes from May Perez. I'm just going to give you an answer. No, because I think Connor is just done. And Chandler will fight soon. It sounds like he's got something in the works. But unfortunately, no. Now, I also get bailed out if Connor does come back but fight someone else, right? Because if Chandler moves on, then would I have liked it to happen? Yes. Do I think Chandler had a shot? Yes. Because Connor was the favorite. I really wanted it to happen, but this is all on McGregor. We know that. Jones, this is dumb. Jones isn't a top 50. He's the heavyweight champ. He hasn't fought many heavyweights. I agree with you, but okay, this guy's talking to Liar Slayer. We're down. I'll do 3 more. George, do you think Arnold Allen is in a tough spot? Where does he go next? Beat Giga, undefeated until Max, and very competitive. Should have got the win over Evloev, but the division stacking up. Right. The 2-fight losing streak hurt him a lot because he had like a 10-fight win streak going in. But then he just recently won. And all that does is put him in a position where he has to take another fight. That didn't. You shake off the 2-fight losing streak, but that's not enough to say, okay, it's you versus the winner of Topuria. And no, you still got Alexander Volkanovski, you still got Brian Ortega. So yeah, you're still a little bit behind. And you better, you know what? Don't discount the move Diego Lopez is making. Diego Lopez fights at Noche UFC, and that's going to be a big fight for him. But do not discount. He's got the it factor. He's ticking boxes. He's fighting frequently. The UFC loves you if you do that. But yeah, there's still, like I say, these other names, Yair Rodriguez. And then you got to be careful with Aljamain Sterling. What if he beats Evloev, right? Now he's a former champ doing well at featherweight. You never know. Although he always had this, he was always in the slow lane for the UFC. So who knows? But yeah, I think Arnold Allen needs to pick up another win. He should fight one of these other guys. Maybe the winner of Ortega Lopez, unless one of them thinks they're next. But as long as Volkanovski's around and Holloway wins, Volkanovski's probably next. If Topuria wins, then Volkanovski's not next, and I would try and pick a fight with Volkanovski. Then that clears the runway for you for sure if you're Arnold Allen. But you might as well either wait or, depending on if you want to take a fight, you take a fight, not the end of the world. Looks like Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi has been signed November 2nd in Edmonton. That would have been nice in New York, by the way. But yeah, I just happened to click on the wrong button there. Me and the colleagues are chatting, and I noticed what they were chatting about. So I stumbled across that. But yeah, Amir Albazi is back from his neck injury. He's fighting Brandon Moreno. And what else? I said there's 3 left, but I don't know if there's 3 in here. So maybe I should start wrapping up. I'm scrolling. Yair is the one I thought if Rackett. Yeah, he's becoming a little less beneficial. That loss hurt him against Ortega for sure. Otherwise, he was up next, man. Are you guys excited for Nasruddin Imavov versus Brendan Allen? Mm-hmm. Yep. Brendan Allen's coming off that win over Marvin Vettori. I'm just kidding. I like Marvin, man. He's got one arm, right? Because he just had the shoulder surgery. Oh, but I did want to say this. If you guys haven't seen at a recent PFL, those guys got in a street fight at the Hard Rock, right? So I guess a casino fight. And Brendan Allen comes in and boom, boom, lights up Vettori pretty good. At least 2 landed. But I finally saw an angle from behind Vettori because the way the fight got broken up, it looked like Allen mauled him. 10-8, whatever. And then he gets kind of swallowed by either being amongst people that are on a craps table or bouncers or friends that broke it up. But there's this other angle from Vettori's side, and it doesn't look like the punches are too bad, and it looks like he slips a nice one in there. I think he still has to take the L, but it might be 10-9, or some might even give him a 10-10 just because, again, he's only got one arm. But the first angle just showed it was all Allen all day. Look it up. Probably go to Marvin Vittori's Instagram. I think he's where I saw the second angle. Atlantic audits. Hey George, who comes out on top of Colby versus Dustin? I was asked this earlier, but if they were to fight, I'd say Dustin now. Colby just takes too much time in between fights, and he didn't look the same in his last one. And Poirier looked like he really, really worked hard on takedown defense, getting up, mitigating offensive wrestling, things like that. Considering Riyadh has worked well with the UFC and PFL now, if Francis smokes Fajeda, Jones beats Stipe, could you see Turkey throwing millions at Dana for Jones? Oh, great question. Okay, so let's start again. Matthew Wells from MMA Junkie, one of our editors. Lakers fan. Cowboys fan. He says UFC and PFL, so you don't have the whole television thing. That's usually a big stumbling block. They're both under ESPN. And Turkey is that Sheik guy. I don't have his name, so he's the man from Riyadh season. He looks like he likes to have big events. So could he talk Dana into Jones versus Ngannou for a lot of money? Yes. Would Dana do it? He doesn't like to give shine to other companies, but that was back in the day when Pride and UFC were neck and neck. When UFC and Strikeforce were neck and neck, but Strikeforce was like at least in the conversation. Right now, the UFC is so far ahead of everyone else that who knows if he would do it, knowing it wouldn't affect my business. We're the UFC and we're way up here. PFL's got a long way to go to catch us. And the Sheik's giving us a lot of money. But man, look what would be at risk. What if Jones loses the Ngannou and he's back to square one? So I don't think Dana White would do it. There'd be a few different reasons why he should, but a lot why he shouldn't. It'd have to be the most ridiculous amount of money ever to the UFC. Great question, though. George, what if He-Man was in the room? We would have to beat him for ages, but he's tough. Skeletor isn't happy with us because of it. Can you help us beat him, George? I don't remember this too good. My brother was big into Skeletor and He-Man, and he had all the figures, but I can't remember what each other's strengths were. So it's a fun question, but I don't know. Eric in Facebook, I think. No, YouTube. What's your take on DDP and his style? Seems like there's a lot of mixed options. Regardless, he's our boy, and we always back our boys. Cheers from Africa. Dude, DDP he's legit. DDP is unorthodox, but he's hard to prepare for. He's fearless. He's confident. He's well-rounded. He's heavy-handed. Yeah, he's breathing hard and looks like he's exhausted, but he's not, because those bricks that are attached to his wrists, even when he's just throwing them and landing them, he's affecting you. And like I say, he knows how to strike even when he's hurt. I think Izzy said it. Just when you feel like you're turning the clock, turning the page, and you're getting boom, he sticks you again. And so now you're back to square one. He's pretty good at switching his stances as well. The way he blitzes, you got to be really calm and poised in the pocket if you want to counter. You can't leave your chin out, but if he does leave his chin out, boom, if you clock him on the way in, you could possibly get him. But those blitz attacks, they're pretty impressive. And the fact that he attacks you on the ground puts it in your head that you can't just work on striking defense. You got to be prepared because he's so well-rounded, and on the ground, he's pretty well-versed. I think he's got great ground and pound. We've seen he's got submissions, and he's just getting better and better. So I really think he's awesome. And I think he went about the right way of picking a fight. He knew it would kind of blur possible black and white, right? I think. This is me, all me. I think he knew it would blur that a little bit, but he went the route of saying, I'll bring the belt back to Africa, not like the other guys who now live in America or New Zealand. So at the time, it was Francis Ngannou, who lives in Las Vegas, Kamaru Usman, who lives in Florida, and Israel Adesanya, who lived in New Zealand. He knew it would sting them because they are proud Africans, and they should be, and they've represented the continent well. But I think he knew it would sting him in a way like that, and it could possibly blur the lines, maybe. But he didn't blur it because he didn't say it. He just used the fact that he's in Africa. So in a way, it was kind of ingenious, and you could tell he really stirred Izzy up because Izzy's the one that had to do something about it. Usman's a welterweight. Yeah, he fought his last fight at middleweight, I know, but he's a welterweight, and Ngannou's a heavyweight. Izzy had to do something about it, and he probably got, out of the three, the more emotional of the three, although Usman doesn't seem to be too far behind. But that might have helped. That might have helped. And he was also smart. He didn't force himself to fight Izzy after he beat Whitaker. Remember, they said, hey, bravo. That was in July of 2023. All right, we need you in September 2023. He said, no, I'm not ready to go. Okay, but others have waited before and it hasn't gone their way. He waited. What happened? Strickland beat Izzy. And then he beat Strickland. 300, we need you. No, I'm not ready to go. When I'm ready, I'll go. That's what I like about DDP, is he kind of stands up for himself in that regard. When I'm ready, I'll let you know. Now, it might cost him in the future, right? He might want a certain location or something like that. Maybe the OC will go, well, no, we're ready this time, and he'll roll with it. He doesn't seem to fear anyone, but I really, really am a fan of DDP. I got to get out of here. I went 90 minutes. It was supposed to be an hour, but I love doing this, and hopefully you guys loved it too. So if you did, let me know. And I'm at MMA Junkie George on Twitter and Instagram. I'm just looking at the numbers, and we still have people there. That's why I was doing it, and I didn't want to leave anyone out. That's why I kept going. Was it a mistake to offer the intro to Tom and Pavlovich? Yes, it was. I think once he had the shoulder injury, we knew it was serious. Knees, blown Achilles, shoulders. Man, they did it to Yuri. They did it to Hill. I think they could have said, John, when you come back, you just get the winner. But they elected to do the whole "we got the baddest man on the planet" thing because Ngannou had left, I think. And so they've really, really treated Aspinall bad in my regard. I wouldn't have done it for the intro. I would have said, these are the guys. And when Jones and Miocic comes back, we'll make that a legacy fight. Two of the greatest in New York, wherever you want it. A little bit more cheddar. You guys are great. We get it. But we got to get this thing going, bro. We had the holdout with Ngannou. We've had, John Jones now, his injury. Like, the heavyweight division should always be clicking. And you got a young, healthy guy who can talk a little bit of smack. He's ending his fight. Tom Aspinall had 3 fights end in 1 minute. They all qualify for the World MMA Awards. If you haven't voted for the World MMA Awards, get to worldmmaawards.com. We're up for Best Media Source. My colleague Nolan King is up for Best Journalist. We'd love to take your vote. The voting's through September 30th. Well, why wait? Today's your day off if you're in the USA, and if you're anywhere else in the world, we just ask you to take 10 minutes out of your time. It's 23 categories. You don't have to do all 23 if you don't want. You can just do 5. The Ring Card Girl, the Fighter of the Year, Junkie for Best Media Source, Nolan King for Best Journalist, and one other one, right? You can do them all if you want. But it's easy. WorldMMAAwards.com. It ends the 30th, but do it today. Today. So yeah, I think they should have moved on, and the winner of that should have been Aspinall. And you know what? When it looked like either Miocic or Jones still wasn't ready or something was happening, I would have said it's Aspinall versus Blades. We're moving on, and that would have been it. Quay Stefan, happy Labor Day to you too. Francis A, top tier athletes. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. Hendo's Pride career seemed more prolific. It was prolific, bro. How is Brandon Moreno not on the card? He took some time away, Quay Stefan, and so that's why he's not on this one. But it would have been nice to have him on Nacho UFC. I honestly think the pressure of being champion and carrying the country of Mexico on his back really got to him. We would ask him questions about that, and he kind of didn't like to answer them too much because I felt like it added. And so I think he did the right thing. I'm not retired. I'm just stepping away. Looks like that time is up, and he's fighting Amir Albazi on November 2nd in Edmonton, Canada. I just shared that with you guys a little while ago because I saw it. I saw the Junkie staff discussing it. Oh, shit. Is it public? Yeah, I think it is. Maybe it was something I shouldn't have said. No, but it was. And then I think that's it, guys. I want to bounce. Brian John, NFL, NBA, MLB, also have player unions. Shit, I'm really behind on stuff. That was like 20 minutes ago. They do. The UFC has independent contractors, so they can't unionize. What they can create though is a player association, we call it. Thank you for clicking like, Beastman. I appreciate it. Look at Goes. I knew it. He's involved in that He-Man Skeletor conversation. And somebody said Izzy could fight in the co-main or Poirier. That'd be nice, right? Izzy says he wants to stay busy. Who would you match him up against? Kyle Barrio is who I would have chosen, although Kyle Barrio looked good last weekend. And now I'd be like, oh, maybe not him after all if I'm Israel Adesanya, but there's not too many people left because he's kind of beating everyone else. And just because you guys took the time to hang out, I'm just scrolling super fast right now. Here's a super chat from Brian John. Thoughts on Hamzat Whitaker co-main event switch? What do you mean? I thought that was the co-main the whole time. Or the fact that they did it once and now they're booked to do it again. Whitaker said, I want the toughest guy. And I know that turns the UFC on when someone says that, because supposedly Hamzat's the boogeyman. And so when that fight didn't happen and he beat, who was it, Ali Skarov or something like that? He said, nah, if you want Whitaker, I want him. I love Whitaker as of late. He is a G, man, a straight up G. I hope he gets one more title shot before his time's up. He's been great and he's been quiet but overlooked. Nocturnal's Buck Talk. You guys have a great show and great conversation. Appreciate the content. Thank you, sir. Thank you. If you may, please hit the like button on the way out. Do you think Whitaker and Hamzat's going to happen? Ooh. Remember I was saying I was scolding the other kid? Be positive, right? Yes, I think it's going to happen. If it didn't, I wouldn't be shocked, but I think it's going to happen. So there you go. Sky V's an awesome Q&A. I'm glad you enjoyed it, bro. Upcoming events, I usually don't get the pay-per-views because we have excellent writers that go out there, and Goes and I do the watch-alongs. So, yeah. And I hope you answered your question. I didn't want to just dismiss it because thank you for the super chat, Brian John. But I think it's going to happen. I think it's a great card, but Hamzat needs to do something, man. He's always winding up in the hospital. They say there's problems, allegedly problems in possibly fighting in the United States, although he did it last time. So who knows? He's got to get a fix on that. That's all I'm saying. And is that it? Damn, a lot of them came through. I guess I was taking too long. Why didn't anyone say, hey, fat boy, you're taking too long on your questions. Get to mine. John Esquivel, Henry Cejudo, Triple C, a champ that I would not consider a quitter, but if he moves to 125, I believe his career would end with him being considered a quitter because he quit. 135, what do you think? 125 is the quickest way for him to be involved in a title shot. 135 seems to have kind of like pushed him out because he lost key fights to Merab and Sterling. So he stirs the pot nicely. He's bigger. He's older. But once I saw Kayla make 135, I believe Henry could make 125, but that is the quickest way to a title shot. And I hope he does. And I hope he does it the right way. But it takes a lot of discipline. Yeah. So listen, I better get out because I'm scrolling and it's not ending. Oh, it just ended. Okay. So being that I know that it just ended, this is the second to last one. I have a question. Why did TJ Dillashaw suspended for years being tested positive while Jones just got away with it? TJ was suspended, if I got this straight, by USADA, came clean, accepted the 4-year ban? He also knew he had to clean up the shoulders, but the shoulders haven't been responding, and I think he just knows he's done. It was probably his way of clearing his conscience. With Jones, I think one of them was prior to USADA. I think other stuff was after USADA. USADA's cleared him of some stuff, but his had to do with the one where it gets into the red blood cells and like Lance Armstrong. TJ's was very serious. EPO, very serious deal. John's, I think, was a little bit more in that little. I think what Jones had to do with more was when he bulked up initially when he wanted to be a heavyweight. He probably, since he was away from the sport, was just getting creative in his bulking up, and then when it was time to get off, the picograms remained. That's what I think. And the last one was this one, or was that it? Cooper Lee Lockhart. Do you think Hamzat is the reason for 3 rounds instead of 5? Yeah, I could see that. Hamzat, after the halfway point of round 2, seems to definitely diminish a little bit. All right, folks. Now I'm really out. Thank you so much for tuning in. An hour and 40 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a holler on on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at MMA Junkie George. You can catch mine and my brother's podcast, MMA Junkie Radio, twice a week. Just go to the site and retrieve it there, or go to your favorite podcast platforms like Omni, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. We're getting close to celebrating show number 3,500. So you've been around for a minute. And then don't forget, Spinning Backclick every Monday, usually noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. But while Dana White Contender Series is on, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And lastly, for UFC 306 and all the other pay-per-views coming up, Goes and I will be hosting watch-alongs where we can watch the fights together. So if you order the pay-per-view, we'll watch the fights together. If you don't, count on us to be your eyes and ears, and we'll tell you what's happening in real time. It's a blast. And so was this. Go out and be a champion. Don't just take up space on this earth. Go out and be a champion every day and be a positive person. Pull someone up, too, when you have some success. All right? So we got to be better people here, man. Take care. We'll see you.